Hi guys, in this video I will be talking about something I call paradox of normal. It's an original idea of mine, so I thought, why not make a video about it? Now, by the time you're watching this, I've uploaded another video too. It deals with paradox of dangerousness, but that one is slightly more complicated, so I thought it makes sense to start off with the simpler one, namely paradox of normal. But in case you find some of this interesting, there's a chance you might find the follow-up video useful as well. So it's there. We're going to start off by defining normal. So for this video and for the purposes of this paradox, we are going to talk about normal in what I believe is one of the more common ways to understand normal. Probably the most common way to conceptualize it. And it deals with statistical probabilities. So when things are usual, expected, they are high probable cases, those are normal things. So those what we can call normal, whereas we can apply the word abnormal to the opposite when things are statistically improbable, when things are out of the ordinary or unexpected or unusual. You get the point. But in case you're wondering why I'm using this kind of definition, well, there is even in statistics this concept called the normal distribution. I'm talking along those lines. The normal distribution is at this bell curve where there are these high frequency areas, namely in the middle, which is called the mean. In statistics, the mean is roughly an equivalent to the average. They don't really mean exactly the same, but for our purposes, the differences don't really matter. And when you go further away from the mean, you get to these more and more deviant data points. And in statistics, people use the word outlier to describe those data points, and they are what we can consider abnormal. What lays in the mean or along the mean is then something we can consider normal. Now, I do have some examples of abnormality. I will explain those first, and then I will show where the paradox, in my opinion, lays. So people could be extremely short or extremely tall. They could be highly overweight or just alarmingly skinny. Now, all of these are examples of abnormality from a statistical point of view. Health problems by default are abnormal because, let's say, someone has digestive issues. Well, that's abnormal because most people do not have digestive issues. Now, one domain in which the concept of normal is used with high frequency and very regularly is the sexual domain. We have all these cultural debates concerning things like homosexuality, transgenderism, even pedophilia, where the word normal is used by both sides of the argument, really. Like, it's used as a justification for something or as a way to denounce something. But from a statistical point of view, however you think about those things morally, statistically we can consider things like homosexuality, transgenderism, and pedophilia as abnormal for the simple reason that most people don't exhibit those traits, right? Now, there are other examples of abnormality, like unusual political opinions, unusual hobbies or habits. People could have food preferences that are out of the ordinary. They could have a completely weird sleep schedule that don't reflect at all how the majority sleep. And I certainly I'm a victim of that kind of a sleep schedule when I'm not working. But it just goes on to show that it's not just traits that can be abnormal. It's all the things about you that can basically set you apart from the average or the masses. So why is there a paradox then? Well, the reason is that when we think about all the sundry ways in which people can differ from the expected, the average, like those few examples I gave, I do know that I gave plenty of examples and that might have been a bit boring to you, but there was a point, there was a reason. It was to illustrate that there are so many things about you that can set you apart that I think we can safely say that most people, if not all people, exhibit at least one abnormal feature about them. You can even think about this in terms of you personally. Like, do you have any? Are you going to come up to me and say that you have nothing about you that's unusual? But anyway, if we concede that most people have something abnormal about them, and we consider an abnormal individual or define an abnormal individual as someone with at least one abnormal trait or feature or something about them, This basically means that most people can be considered abnormal. If most people can be considered abnormal, this means that it's common, it's usual, it's high probability that people are abnormal, which then translates to the point that I'm getting to, which is the paradox of normal, which is that it's actually normal to be abnormal and vice versa. Like if we were to find an individual, if someone comes to my comment section and says that, okay, there's nothing unusual about me, there's nothing that sets me apart from others. If a guy like that shows up in my comment section, I'm not saying that's an impossibility. I'm not saying that person would be lying. But what I'm saying is that would actually be the abnormal one. That would be the deviant, because I do believe most people have something unusual about them. You can think about this paradox in many ways, and it's just kind of an interesting idea, because if we had that kind of a normal individual who would have only normal features about that individual, he would be abnormal because of that. But then at the same time, he couldn't be normal anymore, because he would have the feature of being abnormal, because they are normal and that's abnormal. You see why there's this contradiction, and I think this is an interesting paradox, in my opinion. I don't know if you think of much of this, but I just wanted to share this idea with you. I think one of the giveaways here with this video is that because we arrive at these problems, namely paradox of normal, even though we are not doing anything spectacular, like I'm not using any weird definition of normal, I'm just using the same way we understand normal distribution, which is that it deals with averages, it deals with probabilities, something that's usually is normal. Like even when we use such a intuitive and common definition of normal, we arrive at this issue, this paradox of normal. And it goes on to show that I think people, when they are making these arguments concerning, let's say, different sexualities, which I briefly mentioned before, I think they are doing something that's sort of irrational, in my opinion, because they are just putting way too much weight on such a vague, mushy concept such as normality. And even if they do define it some way, these problems with the word normal are inescapable, because I'm aware there are different ways to define normal. We can talk about normal in terms of what's according to norms, like the norms of society, which reflect the laws and morality. But even then, we do arrive at these separate issues, like different issues. I do have another video about where I discuss appeal to normal as an argument and why I think it fails. All I'm saying is that when you are making arguments, you really probably should not be using the word normal. Like, who's normal anyway? Why should we be normal? I don't want to go off on a tangent here, because I'm just talking about paradox of normal. But when you think about it, like all the progress in society, I just thought about this few days ago. Like all the progress in society you can think of is because of people coming up with abnormal ideas. Because isn't that what progress is? You're having a society that does something different from what it did before, which means that there had to be a person with an abnormal idea. Otherwise, it would just be the same. Like there would be no changes in history. Do we really want that? I guess there are some people who don't want anything to change and progress, but I certainly am not one of those. So I do not think appeal to normal is a valid argument. Finally, I would like to acknowledge something here at the end. I noticed that I have now over 100 subscribers, and I'm aware that's not a big number. I don't pretend it is. I still felt I would acknowledge that, because the content I'm making is an excessive taboo, and I'm very aware that it's such a taboo. In case you are not aware, I'm really talking mostly about minor attracted people, and it's not exactly the easiest subject, but to know that there are over 100 people who are investing time from their busy lives watching my content, supporting my channel and subscribing to it, it means a lot to me. And it makes me glad, because I know that there seems to be more people out there who really care about the subject, who think it's a worthwhile discussion to have, because I've come to this conclusion that the overwhelming majority don't really even want to think about pedophilia or anything related to that, let alone talk about it. So I just want to thank my subscribers, because you guys are really making me a bit more hopeful for a future in which the subject of minor attracted people might be discussed with a little bit more rationality and less knee-jerk reactions. So I appreciate it. That's all I have. Thanks for listening.